Welcome, everybody, to a special episode of Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. We have the one and only Matthew Berry joining the program of NBC Sports, also the founder of FantasyLife.com, an award-winning newsletter at Fantasy Life, a great full-scale site. Matthew is Mr. Fantasy Football, of course, with NBC, Sunday Night Football, and Peacock, and he's going to tell us a little bit about something he's working on with Progressive, the fantasy backup sweepstakes. So stay tuned for that. A lot of conversation about Giants and NFL fantasy advice for both now and heading into 2025. First, want to tell you about our sponsors, MyBookie, rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors this season, especially on Thursdays with risk-free bets and with the Pats Picks promo code. Use that Pats Picks code and you get a 100 or a 50% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. If you had used the old deal, the 100% match, you would have made a killing, as Pat's Picks has been rolling this year. We went 15-1 against the spread 2 weeks ago. Took a little bit of a bath in this previous slate of NFL games, but we're still way ahead on Pat's Picks, on our overall picks, on our spreads, and on those Giants and NFL sprinkles. So stay with us there. MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere with the Pat's Picks promo code. Log in and start your account today. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today. Use the Talkin' Ball 25 code or access it through the QR code on your screen, and you'll get 25% your first order off on the subscribe and save option. So right now you get 25% off that first order on subscribe and save. It's only going to cost you $30. So start feeling the difference today. Go to boomchaga.com. And brought to you, of course, by Estate 98 Coffee, our sponsor who sponsors the Giants Estate 98 Trivia on our Talkin' Ball live chats with Giants and NFL fans. It's a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/Talkin' Ball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. And now on to our fun and informative interview with Matthew Berry. All right, welcome back to Talking Ball with Pat Leonard on the Believe Network. A special guest today, the one and only talented Mr. Roto, Matthew Berry himself, Mr. Fantasy Football for NBC Sports, Sunday Night Football, and Peacock, and also the founder of Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. It's FantasyLife.com, an award-winning newsletter, expert advice, and exclusive tools to help you dominate your league. The cleanest and most informative site out there, frankly, Matthew. Not just saying that to you because you're here, but welcome. Thanks for joining the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks. We put a lot of hard work into that, and I've got a great team there that have done a great job, and we're thrilled with sort of all the success of it. Yeah, the site is great, by the way, and it's free for anyone listening. Like, the newsletter is free. There's a lot of stuff on the site that is free, so go check it out. I think it'll help you. If you play fantasy football or bet on sports or play DFS, we have something for everyone.
Awesome on social media too. I like the algorithm has me right now with fantasylife.com on Instagram. You know, it's like they know what I'm thinking before I think it, and they're giving me the advice on your Instagram account. So I do appreciate that as a fantasy footballer myself. So before we get into talking about some Giants, some NFC East, some NFL fantasy football nuggets, you're working with Progressive right now on something really interesting. Why don't you tell us about this fantasy backup sweepstakes?
Look, Progressive knows that things don't always go as you hope, whether it's in the home or, with your car or whatever. Progressive always has your back, right? They always want you to have a backup plan. It's important in life and it's important in fantasy football. And so Progressive is there when things don't go the way you hope they would. And so they're extending that, that mindset to fantasy football this year. And so to your point, if you've had a bad season, let's say you invested heavily in the New York Giants, for example, whatever. If your year didn't go the way you hoped it would, maybe you drafted poorly, maybe you've had some bad injuries, whatever, for whatever reason, if you're in the bottom half of your standings right now, you can go to fantasybackupplan.com, upload a screenshot of your standings that show that you're in the bottom half of the standings, and you can be eligible to win a portion of $59,000 in prizes. Again, it's just sort of Progressive's way of saying, like, hey, we've got you. How it's important to have a backup plan, whether it's in life or in fantasy football.
Very cool. So that's fantasybackupplan.com. You can submit up to the 18th. So upload a screenshot of your rankings for a chance to win a piece of $59K in prizes. That is awesome. I actually am not in a draft league this year, believe it or not. I'm playing the daily, the salary cap, the weekly salary cap, because I was in those bottom halves a little too often lately, Matthew. I needed to kind of take a breather and get right back into it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's part of all their, you've probably seen the commercials with with Josh Dobbs or, Case Keenum, a Progressive with all the backup plan. It's a really fun campaign, I think, that they've done.
Yeah, that really is awesome. For those fantasy managers out there, though, who are still in the race, are still in the hunt, maybe they're still chasing it. Maybe they have some injuries, right? We're always looking for those sleepers, especially at the end of the season where teams start making the playoffs, teams start falling out of contention, and you don't know who's going to be in, who's going to be out. One thing I always go to for you are those sleepers, right? Especially at this end of year. I want to know from you to start off here. Can you give me a couple of your favorite sleepers? Maybe one guy who's still available out there to be picked up, and then maybe there's someone who's on rosters right now who no one's looking at and saying, like, he's probably not going to produce. He hasn't produced all year, but he's going to pop down the stretch.
Sure. I'll give you a couple of guys. First off, just in terms of a sleeper who's available in a decent amount of leagues, I think he was probably picked up in some leagues, but he's definitely not rostered in 100% of leagues. And it's a local kid, and that's Isaiah Davis of the New York Jets. Look at the Jets' upcoming schedule, right? They're home to Jackson. They've got the Jacksonville, the Rams, and at Buffalo. Even that Buffalo game, I mean, yes, Buffalo's great, but they should be down. Davis is the pass-catching running back here. I think you could make an argument Davis is more talented than Braylon Allen. I know that Braylon Allen's the bigger guy. Breece Hall dealing with a knee injury. I know the Jets are saying we're not shutting Breece Hall down yet, but you got to shut Breece. I mean, there's literally it's a knee injury to one of your franchise guys in a season that's lost. Why on earth would you put Breece Hall out there? So I think Isaiah Davis is going to get an opportunity here to get some run. And, when it comes to the Jets, obviously I thought offensively they looked really good last week against Miami. And while the season hasn't gone the way the Jets haven't, again, the importance of a backup plan. The Jets learned last year how important it is to have a backup plan, and they didn't. Indeed. When Rodgers went down at the start of the year. But, I think a lot of those Jets players and coaches are playing for jobs next year. It's clear that they're going to, they've got to do a major reset here. And I think you can make an argument Rodgers is playing for his job or a job in the NFL next year. A lot of those offensive linemen, the coaching staff, just a lot of the people that aren't sort of the tentpole franchise guys are playing for jobs. So I think they'll perform well down the stretch, the Jets offensively. So kind of like Isaiah Davis there, in kind of a flex sort of way. Some other guys that I think, I think they're rostered, but who I do think could have a big run here that haven't done much this season or been at least inconsistent. And I'll talk about, I think, Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. It's been a very up and down year for both those guys. Kyler Murray's my ride or die, and it hasn't worked out the way I hope. He's been fine, but he hasn't been amazing. But one of the things that I think goes overlooked is that Murray has faced a really tough schedule, but his upcoming playoff schedule is awesome. Patriots this week, then the Panthers, then the Rams. Ooh. And again, the Rams are sort of a hot team, but like defensively, they're not anything that scares you. I mean, they basically outlasted the Bills because their offense was rolling so good, but like they haven't stopped anyone in a while. And so I do think Arizona against the Patriots, Panthers, and Rams can get going. And so I think Kyler Murray can. Marvin Harrison Jr. last couple of weeks have gotten multiple end zone targets. He hasn't come down with a ball yet, but they're trying to get him the ball in scoring position. He's still got like a 20% target share. So they're looking for him. So those are two guys that have been sort of middling this year that I do think will have a big fantasy playoff run.
Kyler's funny because he's kind of like Jamar Chase in that he can have these supernova weeks, right? Like I like that pick too, because down the stretch, especially playoff time, if you're in with him, like you said, you can't give up on him because he could get you 10 points one week, but if he has the game, he could go for 45 points the next week, right? Like that's what he's capable of. So I like that, especially like big names that maybe people have given up on at this point. One guy I'm excited about, I got to admit, even though I don't know if he's going to replicate it or not, but it's somebody that I thought all year I was in on saying this guy was going to produce, was Jalen McMillan with the Bucks, the rookie receiver from Washington. Sure. Especially when Chris Godwin went down, I figured he was going to step up. He was going to jump in. He was going to have big numbers. And it just wasn't happening, right? It was like 2 catches here, 1 catch there, 3 catches there. Finally got in the end zone this past week a couple of times, but that's the week where I think no one's really looking for it. But this is what I love about following you is you're always giving
and to your point, the Buccaneers have a great schedule as well. They have a really fantasy-friendly schedule down the stretch. So I could see as we're taping it today, Bucky Irving was doing work on the side, so it looks like he's going to be okay. But if that injury that he had last Sunday turns out is more serious, Rachaad White and Sean Tucker could certainly be a part of that. I expect Baker Mayfield. I know he's had a couple of quiet weeks, but I think Baker ultimately has a really nice playoff run here as well.
Nice. All right. So I was telling everybody and you just now how much I love fantasylife.com. And Fantasy Life has, I noticed, a fantasy punishment generator.
Yeah, we do.
To generate a customizable punishment for last place. It's one of the best and funniest, but right on point features that I've seen. So my question for you, obviously, having done this so long and been essentially the dean of fantasy football, Matthew, what is the funniest punishment you've ever either had to endure yourself or that you've seen from somebody else, whether it's on social media or somebody in one of your leagues?
I've never had to do a punishment myself. I've never finished last in a league, so I am proud to say that.
Knock on wood.
Right, exactly. Right. And there's a bunch that immediately jump to mind, so I'll just whip through a few of them as well. I got so many. When I wrote my book, Fantasy Life, I got so many of them submitted to me, and I made it a big part of that book and of sort of the press tour that I did around it. And then it's people keep bringing it up. When I had my ESPN show, we used to do a fantasy punishment at the end of the show every single episode, and so those were always fun. So I've seen them all. I feel like the immediate ones that immediately jump to mind that I just think are the funniest and most original. You've heard about the tattoos and everything like that. The loser league has to get a tattoo chosen by the winner, but some ones that I think people haven't heard as much. I'll try to give you a few original ones. One is that you ever seen Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah.
Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Yep.
So there was a league where they basically enacted the scene where she had to walk naked through the whole town. So the loser of the league was completely naked except for boxer shorts, and he was wearing a sign that said "Fantasy Football Loser" around his neck. And the rest of the league followed him throughout the city in robes with bells going, shame, shame.
That is
shame.
Unbelievable.
It's on. And this one's on YouTube. I saw this, so you can find that one. But that one was pretty amazing. Another one that I thought was pretty funny was, how at grade schools, they have their basketball courts. The hoops are only 8 feet. They have lower basketball hoops for the little kids to shoot.
Yep.
What this league did is they went to one of those 8-foot hoops, and the loser of the league had to stand under the hoop. And each member of the league took turns dunking on him, just completely posterizing him. And then they filmed it and they shot it in slow motion, and they got legs around him and everything like that. And
Candids, all that, yeah.
Dunking on the kid. So I thought that was pretty good. There's a league in the Bronx, New York, where the loser of the league has to dress up as a lion, and the rest of the league chases him with a paintball gun. They hunt him down. So you got 11 people chasing this one. This one guy's in a lion outfit running around, and the other 11 are chasing him, shooting at him with paintball guns.
These people make me feel not creative because it's any of my ideas don't hold a candle to any of this,
And perhaps maybe my favorite one. I've written about this league before. They're in San Diego. I actually don't know if they're still a thing, but do you remember back in the day there used to be these things called fat heads,
Oh yeah.
There was these massive wall, for people that don't remember what they were, but fatheads were these things where the massive posters that sort of had a magnetic that you could stick to a wall. And they're often like these life-size posters of like Josh Allen or, Jalen Hurts, pick a, super Michael Jordan, whatever, pick a superstar. Well, Fathead had for a while, they had a option where you could send in a photo that could be made into a fathead, into a customizable fathead. So this league, the loser of the league had to get a fathead of the winner. The winner got to choose the photo, and the loser had to display the photo, the fathead, in their bedroom. And Pat, this is a bunch of like single guys in their 20s. Like they were all 25.
It's incredible.
And so can you imagine? And the other rule was that you weren't allowed to explain why you had this fathead. So the year that I wrote about him, the guy that won is on a bearskin rug, wearing nothing but like boxers and just like, posing, this, hand on his head, like he's some centerfold model, but he's like some 25-year-old guy with like a beer gut. And so he's just there in his boxers. And so this poor kid, this single guy, for a year had to have a fathead of his buddy in boxers, like a giant life-size fathead above his bed. I'm guessing his social life wasn't great that particular year.
I am so glad I asked you that question. I have not laughed this hard doing a podcast. Your website really is fantastic. Well, let's hope you don't finish last in any league, because clearly, based on all the stories that you've written about in your book and that people have scoured the internet searching, someone would get you pretty badly.
For sure.
Another feature I like on your site, by the way, that people should know is you can seamlessly sync your roster from any other site's fantasy league to fantasylife.com, which I think is great as well.
Matthew, we allow you to say, hey, here's the free agents you should pick up. Here's some trades you should make. Here's how we would, based on your sites, based on the scoring in your league, here's what we would suggest. Here's what the projections say in terms of who you should start, who you should sit. We try to make it as easy as possible for you.
I love it. Yeah, very inclusive. All right, some other fantasy questions I have for you. So I know there's a lot of other more involved setups, formats, but some people still do like to play that standard fantasy snake, draft 10, 12 team league, whatever it is. And that's always been my old reliable. And one thing I've always grappled with, and I wanted to ask you about, is do you believe in rostering a stud quarterback fairly early in the draft to make sure, because you have to play one every week, that you have that Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, or prior to seasons like this, a Patrick Mahomes in your roster? Or do you believe more in getting those running backs and receivers, that value, so to speak, in fantasy, and then kind of plugging and playing and figuring it out with whether it's rookie quarterbacks or, sleeper quarterbacks throughout the league, and that's the best way to kind of operate?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, both and neither. Like, not to sort of dodge the question, but the truth is that every league's different. Every kind of scoring system is different. In a 14-team 2-quarterback league, I'm taking a quarterback with my first pick. In a 10-team 1-quarterback league, I'm waiting a while before I get a quarterback. So it sort of just depends on the league, the settings you're in, how deep the league is, what are your benches, everything. And I also, it depends on where I'm picking, right? Because I'll do mock drafts and I'll be like, all right, if I go a quarterback early in this league, what does my team look like in the middle rounds? Oh, if I wait on a quarterback, where does it go? Where can I, from this pick versus that pick, you can sort of do all that. You can sort of test that out. By the way, we have a product at fantasylife.com, since you're mentioning, called Draft Champion, that allows you to do just that. That just sort of, we import your site settings. You can draft against an AI version of Matthew Berry. You can sort of like see how I would draft and practice drafting against me or drafting against other people as well. So it's a very helpful tool as you prepare for the season. But so for me, in terms of answering your question, Pat, I sort of just let the draft come to me. I have my rankings. My rankings are my rankings. And I just sort of follow the rankings more or less. Although, again, rankings are just sort of a guide. They're not a hard, true, and fast. And again, you have to sort of adapt within the moment. Like, you may have, I might have a bunch of wide receivers, but, as I'm constructing my team, I went wide receiver early, and like here I'm in the middle rounds, and like I don't need another wide receiver. You know what I mean? So you just it's sort of as you're building your roster, you adjust on the fly in terms of where the ranks are. It's more about tiers and sort of like, oh, I want one more from this wide receiver tier, but the three teams after me all have a lot of wide receivers, and there's 6 guys left in this tier. So I don't need to pick with this one because within 4 picks, I'm going to get another shot, and one of these guys will be available. It's a little bit, it's sort of that. So I don't have a hard, true and fast in terms of you must draft this kind of player by this round. It's a lot about letting the draft come to you and honestly drafting the best player available, because there's going to be surprises at every position, right? I mean, there's, pick, but there are, Brock Bowers went outside the top 10 at tight end. No one drafted Bo Nix. I mean, you could just go on and on and on. Chuba Hubbard was left for dead. No one really, Bucky Irving was a late round flyer. Same was Chase Brown was drafted after Zach Moss. On and on and on. We could sort of go. Like Juwan Jennings was a pickup, right? And he's going to be a top 5 guy down the stretch.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And yeah, I guess I should have specified more my question but you did answer it. Like basically in the 10 team or 12 team league where you're only starting 1 QB, you say
I'm waiting.
Largely you're waiting. I always struggle with that because I always feel like if I don't get the sure thing at QB, I feel like I'm chasing it the rest of the season. But it comes back to bite you too, because like you said, you need multiple players at these other different positions, and you need depth at those positions as well. So it's not going to be a perfect draft, but no, fascinating. That really, really good answer. So here in New York, we talked a little Jets earlier. Malik Neighbors obviously looks like he could be a potential superstar here with the Giants, but they have the worst offense in the league. He's frustrated. So despite the encouraging rookie stats, let's say, hard to really project where he's going to go, what he's going to be in the future. My question for you is, do you see and can you project his stock as obviously rising going into 2025 based on seeing, like, for example, Terry McLaurin, who was already a good player? You get Jaden Daniels in there. Suddenly the picture changes. He changes as a fantasy option, as a productive player in the NFL. Will you, Matthew Berry, look at 2025 and say, well, obviously the Giants are going to add a quarterback. The play is going to be better. So Neighbors is going to be a fantasy star. Or do you need to see it before you believe that he's going to be that top tier next year?
No, I believe his stock will be higher in 2025 than it was this year for a few reasons. Number one is just talent. Like, I think if you redid the NFL draft today, there's a decent chance that Malik Neighbors goes over Marvin Harrison Jr. And by the way, that's not hindsight being 2020. Going into the draft, there were a number of draft evaluators I know that had Neighbors over Harrison as their number 1 wide receiver prospect. So I don't think there's any question from anyone as to this kid's talent, right? And so fantasy success, very simply, Pat, comes from 2 things, and 2 things only. And there's a lot of nuance to it under those 2 buckets, but really it's talent and opportunity. Are you good? And will you get the opportunity to be on the field and have the ball in your hands? That's really what it boils down to. And you can pull different levers, and sometimes there are players that aren't super talented but get a massive opportunity, or people that are super talented but don't get a big opportunity. But Malik Neighbors has both. He is super talented, and he's going to get an opportunity. He's going to be out there in every snap. At this moment, we don't know who the quarterback of the Giants is going to be next year. Right. I'm not even sure who the coach is going to be. But whether it's Brian Daboll comes back or there's somebody else in charge, that person's going to look around and say, you know what? I don't have all that much to work with on this team, but you know what I do have? I got a stud at wide receiver. I'm going to get the ball to 1. I got to figure out a way to get the ball to 1. Because if you're Brian Daboll, I think Daboll's a good coach. I think Daboll's had, some tough luck. So I'm a Daboll fan. But regardless, either Daboll's going to be like, he's my best player and I got to get him the ball, because he certainly, for the most part this year has done that. Or whoever the new guy is going to be like, the last guy didn't get him the ball enough, so I want to keep my job. So the ball's going Malik Neighbors' way. And whatever the quarterback situation for the Giants is, it'll be better than it was this year. I don't believe they will go into next season with just Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito as their quarterbacks. They will either draft somebody, they will sign a free agent, they will do something. Their quarterback situation, at least at the beginning of the year, will be better than it is next year. This is why we play the games. we don't know, but like whether they draft somebody or they sign a free agent, there will be optimism around the quarterback position. There will be a thought process that regardless of whoever it is, that guy is better than what we had here last year. And so stock is about perception. And I think people will receive the changes to the Giants organization as being positive for Malik Nabers. So I would say stock up.
Really speaks to his talent, like you said, that with so much uncertainty, his stock is just obviously up anyway as well. But I agree with you too. Yeah. The surrounding circumstances, it can't get any worse. But he had a concussion this year. He's got a hip flexor right now, but largely like he's playing through an injury right now, which is frankly, to be honest, Matthew, like you don't want a guy to be hurt at all. But the fact that he played last week, like if you had Malik Nabers and you were going into the playoffs last week, he didn't look like he's going to play. A lot of guys aren't playing with hip flexors, right? So the fact that he battled through it gave you some points, right? Like that's a good sign as well when you talk about the opportunity. So really good point. Another question about this relates to rookie receivers as well. So I want to know, this is again a projection question. There have been so many rookie receivers who have had explosive success in recent years now in the NFL. It's kind of the way the league has gone. You know, Nabers had a strong season, but you talk about Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Nabers, Brock Bowers, even if you want to group the tight ends in as well. Does that allow you, like when you're looking at projections in the spring, after the draft happens, you're getting into OTAs and training camp, does that allow you, do you feel comfortable at that point when you're projecting players in drafts and in your rankings? Will you feel comfortable now in the modern NFL projecting, let's say, a rookie receiver who joins the Kansas City Chiefs and is a first or second round pick? Can you now confidently say, like, this kid should be drafted in the top 4 rounds, even though you haven't seen him play a down in the NFL yet based on this recent precedent? Or is that just still dangerous from a fantasy manager perspective? Like you do have to wait and see.
Somewhere in between. I mean, I think there's some things you can sort of project. All right, we know this quarterback's pretty good. We know they're going to get this, this opportunity. I mean, like Ladd McConkey was a popular sleeper this year for myself and a lot of other people as well. And I think it's because, Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, all those guys that were on the Chargers last year left. And there were, 200 something targets that were available. For the Chargers. And so you sort of go, all right, well, here's this slot guy. And there's all these targets available. And so we think McConkey's going to get a pretty big opportunity because they just don't have a lot of other guys here. And even though you've got a run heavy coordinator and head coach coming in, still got to throw the ball somewhat. And so who are they throwing to? So you can sort of project role, I think, somewhat, you still got to play the games, but yeah, I believe you can, if you have a sense for not only how talented the kid is, but more importantly, how does his skill set fit into the offensive scheme of the team that he's going to, and how he fits in, physically with the team in terms of what they want to try to accomplish, then you sort of like, all right, again, projections are not foolproof, but yeah, you have a pretty good sense of like, if you believe in the kid and you feel like he's going to get a good opportunity, then you get a chance to sort of, talk about some of the players that you think have opportunity.
McConkey's a great example too, like you said, of reading the tea leaves and kind of evaluating the roster, being able to see that opportunity. All right. Staying on projections, let's go. Let's stay here, not just in New York, but in the NFC East. Giants, Cowboys, Eagles, Commanders. I want to hear your top 5 NFC East keepers going into the 2025 season. Obviously some palatable options there.
So here's my question for you. Yeah. Like, what league are we keeping this in? Because again, if this is a 2 quarterback league,
right?
If this is a 2 quarterback league, then we're keeping Hurts and Daniels. No question about it. This is a 10-team 1 quarterback league. I might not keep any of the quarterbacks.
So let's go.
We'll be able to get a good quarterback back in the draft.
So let's go the 10-team 1 quarterback to eliminate the QB. So maybe that takes us a little deeper into the weeds of maybe players people aren't expecting, or weapons that might give people an edge there.
All right. So I'll 5, right?
Yep.
So Saquon Barkley with the Eagles is number 1. I think probably CeeDee Lamb is 2. AJ Brown is 3. Uh, got two more left, huh? So
I'm very curious if any and which commanders would make this. That's part of the reason I asked this
that's what I'm
question.
trying to figure out here.
Yeah.
Like, um,
Like a guy like
McLaurin, because Terry McLaurin's been a top 10 wide receiver with Jaden Daniels there. So in a
yeah.
10-team one quarterback league, I don't really need a quarterback. I mean, I think both Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels will be ranked as top 5 quarterbacks next season. And Dak will probably be top 12-ish. But if it's a 10-team, 10 quarterback, one quarterback league, and only 10 quarterbacks are going to be started in any given week, probably not keeping any quarterbacks because I'll get, get Hurts or Daniels. If I don't get one of them, I'll get I'll get Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or, on and on and on. It's just sort of, or Joe Burrow, right? It just, you go on and on and on. So, so I got, let's see, Barkley, Lamb, Brown.
How about Brian Robinson Jr.? What do you think of him?
I was thinking about him, McLaurin. I like Tyrone Tracy quite a bit as well. I think in a better offensive system, he's pretty interesting. I do like Malik Neighbors. I think I would say Terry McLaurin and Malik Neighbors. That would be my final 5. There you go. In terms of my top 5 keepers from the NFC East in a 10-team one quarterback league.
Love it. And I love you putting Tracy right on the edge there because, as people know, converted wide receiver to running back. And frankly, Matthew has not scratched the surface in Daboll's offense yet as a receiving running back. I think whether it's Daboll or somebody else coming in next year, give him more time in that offense. And I think that you're going to see him in a PPR league really start to explode. Matthew,
I have Tyrone Tracy in a number of dynasty leagues, and I agree with you. So love Tyrone Tracy. And I think, again, if there was a different coach or whatever, once we see the situation in New York, Tracy might move up into the top 5, right? But I mean, and I really like Brian Robinson a lot. He's on the cusp as well. The concern is Eckler will likely be back. And what happens if Cliff Kingsbury gets a head coaching job? I know he'll probably be a likely hot head coaching candidate this offseason. There's already 3 openings. I'm sure there'll be more. So, I hate to lose him, but I wonder how much of Brian Robinson's fantasy success has come from the fact that Cliff loves to run it when they get in close.
This has been awesome conversation. We could go another half hour, but I know your time is valuable. I just want to tell all of our listeners and viewers, though, that Matthew works as hard as anybody. I think I respect you, not just because of your knowledge and all of the advice you've given me and others throughout the years that's helped me win leagues, but I've seen you in action, all the sources and all the work that you put in, whether it's at the NFL Combine, on the road throughout the season, in the off season, and building fantasylife.com and now at NBC Sports. Really one of the hardest workers in the business, and everybody should know that. Go to fantasylife.com. And Matthew, just if you want to remind people really quickly what Progressive is doing with this fantasy backup sweepstakes, because it really is an interesting initiative and kind of a fun plan here for people who are out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as we talked about earlier in the show, like I'm working with Progressive, happy to do it. Again, Progressive is, a company that thinks it's important that, that in fantasy football, just like in life, it's important to have a backup plan. Things don't always go as you hope they would. And so when things go awry, whether it's in your home or with your car or your fantasy football team, Progressive has your back. They have a backup plan for you. So if you go to fantasybackupplan.com and you happen to be in the lower half of your standings, if your season hasn't gone the way you hoped, go to fantasybackupplan.com, upload a screenshot of your standings showing you in the lower half of the standings, and you can be entered to win up to $59,000 in prizes.
Awesome. He is Matthew Berry, the talented Mr. Roto, NBC Sports FantasyLife.com. Matthew, so thank you so much for being on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard here on the Believe Network.
Appreciate you, Pat. Thanks, man.
That was the one and only talented Mr. Roto, Matthew Berry. What a fantastic guest. Great conversation. Thank you to Matthew for coming on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard here on the Believe Network, brought to you by MyBookie. And it's special every week with the promo code PATSPICKS, a 50% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip. We've been making you money this season with my bookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, including risk-free Thursdays, Niners, Rams this week, and on through the remainder of the season. Boom Chaga also sponsors the Talking Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink is a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning. Got it right here. And immediately feel the difference. I personally felt a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. Use that discount code TalkingBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, and you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. Right now, that means a month supply costs you only $30. If you use that subscribe and save deal, you don't have to stay on the subscription after that first month. You can cancel with no penalty if you would like. I don't think you will, though. I do believe you will see a difference with this product. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup and skip the lines. We obviously do our Estate 98 Giants trivia every week on Talking Ball live with Pat Leonard. It's a huge hit. Everybody loves the product, and people come back ordering more. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talking ball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order.